everyone's favorite annual podcast.
Yeah, this is the Codec, everyone's favorite annual podcast. And just like I was saying a moment ago, I'm going to repeat to make sure that it got in the recording. From Reset Press and everywhere else you may be listening, this is the Codec. I said that for the first time 8 years ago, but I said the base to this instead. Speaking of which, before we get into the main topic today, you actually said you wanted to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I actually listened to your podcast you did with Evil Monkey, and I thought I had a whole lot of stuff in mind to say about it because I kept I kind of wish I could have been part of that conversation because it was bringing up all these memories and everything. The main thing I wanted to point out was that you mentioned Mystery Video Game Theater 9000.
Oh yeah,
and you're like, that's a weird thing. Nobody would do that. But you know what? Those were basically reaction videos.
Fair enough. And that was before reaction videos were really a thing.
Mm-hmm. Those were the original reaction videos.
Yeah, it was like you watch this ridiculous video, like the mushroom bites, for example, and then we all reacted to like how ridiculous it was. And it's really funny you mention that now because you're right. That was reaction before reaction was a thing. So, yeah, we did pioneer some things, some really weird things when it came to DTT. It was the little project that could, is what I used to call it all the time. Because every time you thought that there was nothing else this thing could do, we did something else. If it wasn't just completely ridiculous, it was fun, it garnered attention, but sadly it just never really got off the ground 100%.
Yeah. We had a whole lot of different types of shows, too.
Yeah.
All things considered.
It was probably like the big underground collab kind of thing, right when that was starting to become like a grand idea. Like Retroware, I remember they were kicking the idea around a little bit, and everybody knows that's when that guy with the glasses was starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
And we really provided an alternative, shall I say, for people who had the Screw Attack mindset but didn't want to be, I guess, in the limelight of that area. I guess the big thing we were trying to accomplish with that is we wanted it to be like a fair criticism zone. Where if you went to somewhere like Screw Attack, I 100% did not believe you were getting fair criticism. Could you agree with that?
Like on your videos or on video games?
On the videos, because you always had these people who were angry that you were chosen to be like featured on the front page.
Oh, right.
People who would just lash out and be unfair.
I don't know if I really experienced that too much because I remember when I was featured, it like really kind of put me on the map. So that was my Thrill Kill video way back in the day. I don't recall getting any negativity for that.
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because when I was telling a good friend of mine that we were going to be recording this today, first thing he asked is, who's Dina? You've never mentioned Dina. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have, but still. I showed him the Thrill Kill video. And that was the first thing he showed. He's like, this video has to be really old. I'm like, yeah, 2008. Almost a decade at this point.
That was actually my second Game Den video. People always think it's the first, but the first was actually Golden Axe. But Thrill Kill was the one that kind of set the tone of them being mostly horror games.
Yeah, that's why I pretty much call you my horror guru. Like, when it comes to any type of horror-related game that I want to talk about, like, I always say, I'm going to save it for when I talk to Dina. Like, Eric had a few opinions about Resident Evil 7. Interestingly enough, he is the one who got me to buy the game. Because he said, I know you like Resident Evil. I know you like the originals, not so much like 5 and on, because he tried to get me to play 5 and I wouldn't do it. And he said, if you buy this, you will not regret it. I promise. And it's like, okay. So that means you're going to go home with me and you're going to watch me play this and I'm not going to regret it. He was like, yeah, sure. And that's what we did. And what else can I think of with DTT since you brought that part up? Thrill Kill. Okay, so that brings up a memory. I mentioned Thrill Kill in a video. I got some information wrong. You showed up and corrected me.
I think I remember that.
That's how I met you.
Huh.
I remember.
Oh, it must have been
that,
one of your
actually.
must have been one of your Mortal Monday
Yes,
articles.
had to have
So I
been.
forgot all about that until just now.
Yep, I used to write about Mortal Kombat all the time. Which is also funny because that bridges into another thing I've been doing lately since we spoke last year. Anybody who's listening to this and you're listening because Dina and you don't know me all that well, I host a fighting game session every single Sunday called Sparring Sunday.
Cool.
The original idea, and before I got with G1 Game Days, which is a big community collaboration, I wanted to call it Mortal Monday and just like do Mortal Kombat sparring. They came to me and said, why don't you just come with us and do all sorts of fighting games and call it Sparring Sunday instead? Which I thought, okay, that's probably a bit better than playing a Mortal Kombat game every weekend, so okay, I can do that. And thus began me streaming. And I do stream it every single weekend. So anyone who
Nice.
wants to check that out, show up.
I like that somebody had to remind you that there are other fighting games besides Mortal Kombat.
Because I was just like, well, I'm just going to play a lot of Mortal Kombat X and maybe Injustice. And they were like, well, can't you play Street Fighter or Killer Instinct? Well, yeah, but why would you want to do that?
Those aren't Mortal Kombat. Don't be silly.
Yeah, you can't even kill people in these games. Why would you want to... I don't get it, is the thing I'm trying to say. I don't understand.
Out of curiosity, if you can, make it brief, what did you think about Mortal Kombat X?
Fantastic.
Awesome.
I
I never.
thought it was
That's yet
great.
another game I didn't really play, but I watched a lot of reviews on it and stuff.
I loved the type of fan service they brought in terms of a lot of the characters they brought in. One of the big things that really upset everyone with that is they didn't bring the cyborgs back in for MKX. So no Sector Cyrax.
I didn't care for them anyway.
Well, there was a lot of people who were upset about that, so they created a character called Triborg. He only types up one character slot, but he can be Smoke, Cyrax, or Sub-Zero if you choose.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was cool.
That's a good way to do it.
Then they started branching into the horror genre a bit more by introducing characters like Jason Voorhees, Leatherface was in the game. Then,
oh yeah, and they had like the Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yeah, they had him in MK9. MKX also had Predator and Alien. So there was a lot going on with that game that could give you fan service from the original Mortal Kombat series if you wanted. If you were a horror fan, you could enjoy those characters. If you enjoyed like 80s kind of sci-fi horror sort of thing, you could enjoy Predator or the Xenomorph from Alien. Cool. I really thought it was a well thought out game. The mechanics were wonderful. No real mechanical issues with it. It really took a lot of things from Injustice and just made it better. And now, while we're talking about that here, Injustice 2 just came out, built upon MKX, and became an even better game. So,
awesome.
Yeah, so it's like NetherRealm Studios really knows what they're doing now. Not to say that they were clueless before, but during the Midway days, things were starting to look a little grim.
Yeah, I've given up on fighting games because I've just come to the conclusion that I'm just not very good at them. I've just never been good at fighting games. And like in the beginning, I didn't care because I could just do like button mashing and, play against the computer on easy mode. And after a while, though, it just got kind of tiresome. And I'm just like, I'm not any good at these games and they're getting kind of boring. So it's like once the fighting game craze, the initial fighting game craze, once that kind of died down, it's like I just kind of stopped playing fighting games. So that's the main reason I never played Mortal Kombat X. But it did look really good.
Oh, it is. It is if you get a chance to try it out. One other game that recently came out just a few days ago, I don't know if you've heard of this, got a chance to see it, or anything like that. Have you seen the new Friday the 13th game?
Yeah, I saw, I've been hearing about it lately. I saw a documentary about it a while back, but Jim Quisition did a review of it, and according to him, it didn't turn out very good.
Oh, that's horrible.
So, I don't know. It's possible he's being kind of picky, but I know some of the people in the comment section said, oh, you're not playing it right, which is possible, but like some of the characters had these really comical, scared expressions.
Yes.
So maybe the game's doing that on purpose. I don't know, but that was kind of weird.
It was interesting because I was watching some gameplay where there was a guy like on voice chat with some other people, and he was just saying something like "knock knock, motherfucker," and then kicks like the side of the a house in, and like the other people are just like, "Oh, he's here," but the characters are screaming and running around with their hands in the air. So that just created a very hilarious moment there because everybody wants to see Jason say "knock knock, motherfucker" before kicking a wall in. Who doesn't want to see that?
Right?
I want to see that. But it's interesting to hear that Jim Sterling has taken such a negative tone to it because Jim, he's usually. How can I say this? Jim usually takes his time with something like that. I had a chance to talk with him personally when I was in a shuttle at a convention one time, and I was telling him all the negative stuff I heard about the Ouya, and he wasn't willing to entertain the idea of saying bad things about it until he tried it. Wouldn't even entertain the idea. So if he says that it's got problems, I assume that it does, but at the same time, it's very possible he's playing it wrong.
Yeah.
He may not understand the mechanics yet.
Yeah, that's possible. And he was playing it with other people, and like maybe they didn't know how to play it. So I don't know. I'm trying to keep an open mind. That kind of disappointed me that it's already gotten a bad review from somebody. But I'm trying to keep an open mind. Like I said, I saw the documentary. I saw the documentary about it where they talked about all the work they put into it, and like I think Kane Hodder was involved somehow. I think he did the motion capture or something.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, it sounded like it was going to be really awesome. So I don't know. We'll see. It might turn out that maybe like the graphics aren't very good, but it's still kind of fun anyway. So
I just can't imagine a game where it's bad because you could play Jason. I can't believe that. That's hard to swallow. Plus, it seems fairly balanced because there was another clip I watched, for example. The survivors are supposed to get out of Crystal Lake and survive. That's the point of their end. So somebody got out of the vehicle they were in. They had a weapon of some sort in their hand. The guy playing Jason was not doing a very good job. He just started slashing about wildly when the person got near him. And when Jason was in a recovery animation, dude just smacked him in the head with the pipe or whatever. Jason fell over. They got in the truck and left. I'm like, okay, this is pretty balanced then. So, I hope it's not that bad. That would be very disappointing.
Yeah, even if it comes across like a fun indie game, even if it's not really an indie game, but you know what I mean? Like if it seems like an indie game, but it's fun. Like, I guess I would be okay with that. That's not as good as they were making it out to be in the documentary, but...
Right. It had indie roots, shall we say. That's the way I could say it. It started as an independent idea, and it grew. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Maybe it grew into something monstrous. I'm not quite sure. Though I am strongly considering getting it just to say, here it is. Wouldn't be a bad idea. But we didn't show up to talk about, like, not Nightmare on Elm Street. What is wrong with me? Friday the 13th. I've got Freddy on the brain now. Not too good if I planned a nap. But Friday the 13th, we want to talk about, a big release for this year, Resident Evil 7. Because we talked about it last year, talked about the aspects of VR, what that could do, and Resident Evil going back to its roots, or so Capcom claimed when it was going into development. Now, I own the game. I've been playing it. You've been watching a whole lot and studying a lot of the footage. So with Capcom's claim that they're going back to their roots, what would you say to that?
Were they going back? Kind of. I mean, like I said, I haven't been able to play it myself, but I know it's definitely nothing like Resident Evil 4.
No.
I know I'm in the minority, but I just really didn't like that one. I didn't like it being really combat heavy like that. I guess this one does feel kind of more like a button masher, which is what I prefer.
Right.
So.
It's got a lot of the feel of the first one, and the fact that, like, in the first one, you get a weapon, a monster comes after you, you point the weapon at the monster, you shoot the monster.
That's true, yeah.
That was a lot of the first Resident Evil. There was a lot of that, a lot of puzzle solving.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the gameplay is actually pretty simplistic. I mean, it's not easy necessarily, but like
No.
it's basic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And this game kind of feels that way from what I've seen.
Back in the day of the first Resident Evil, since it was PlayStation was still fairly new, the concept of a horror game like this was very new. To my knowledge, this was probably one of the first to be on like such a high budget, high pedestal kind of thing. I mean, like, unless you want to talk about Splatterhouse, but I don't think the two can be compared. So it was the first idea like this that I recall, and it was very simplistic in terms of like just gather weapons, shoot the monsters in front of you, solve puzzles. Resident Evil Resident Evil 7, I should say, goes back to this idea tremendously, where you get weapons, you've got some monsters sprawled here and there, solve puzzles, shoot monsters.
Yeah. It's funny because I didn't think of it as being so similar to the first couple games because it looks so different and, actually has good voice acting.
Yeah, it honestly does. It honestly does.
The first person view, kind of takes away from that too. But yeah, now that you pointed out it really gameplay wise, it is pretty similar to the first couple.
Yes, the previous Resident Evil games, if you go to like 4 and on, have become more and more action oriented as time goes on.
Yeah.
Like, I watched a little bit of Resident Evil Revelations, which I own, by the way. I just haven't bothered playing the thing. It was just such an action oriented mess. I really didn't like it. And then you go into something like Resident Evil 6 and you're ready to burn your house down.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's, to me, that bad. No.
Yeah, like I said, I tried playing Resident Evil 4 and I couldn't even get past the first area. And I heard that the couple sequels that came after that were just the same type of gameplay, so I'm just like, okay, I'm giving up on the series unless it goes back to its roots.
Right. 5 gets increasingly worse in that area because you start in broad daylight fighting things. Which is a no-no in terms of Resident Evil. You don't do anything in broad daylight when it comes to Resident Evil. But they threw that out the window. That is back with Resident Evil 7. So 7, you're always going to be in a night type of area. You are always going to be, if you're inside somewhere, it's going to be like a creepy rundown house. You start in a mansion. Well, it's a house that then branches into a mansion that then branches into things, and you start to have, your surroundings expand as you continue to play. Very similar to Resident Evil 1 and 2, mind you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's funny, they called the first game Resident Evil because it took place in a mansion, but then all the rest of the games didn't take place in a mansion, right. So the title didn't really fit.
Right, so Resident Evil 2, for anybody who hasn't played it, and if you haven't, shame on you, takes place in a police station. And then you start to expand throughout the rest of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, it goes back to the first one, is the way I would say. The same idea of like you start in, first it's a rickety house because you're with this family that just seems out of their mind, the Baker family. And you go through their house, find out that it actually branches into this larger mansion, and you go through there solving puzzles, learning more and more about the Baker family and what's happened to them. Because similar to the first Resident Evil, there is an infection going on. They've been infected.
Yeah.
They're not zombies. You're not going to see any zombies or anything like that. Instead, there's a new type of enemy that's pretty interesting called mold monsters.
Mm-hmm. So, they're infected with mold instead of a virus.
Exactly. So
that's the difference mainly.
Any animal, any person who dies becomes a mold monster, more or less. And in terms of it, you can find this if you play the game, you pay attention to the nuances. For example, one family member leaves a note to another that they've stuffed a victim into like a slab in the morgue. Apparently he or she was trying to escape, so they just stuffed them in there to keep them there. You open the slab to get a key because that's part of a puzzle. Next thing you know, a mold monster's coming after you instead of a corpse.
Right.
So that's an interesting take that they've decided to make with that. That also means that you don't have, like, Resident Evil's director's cut where the zombies come back to life and they, like, start sprinting after you, don't they?
I don't think that happens in the first game.
Because there's one I recall where you have to use kerosene to light them on fire, or they get back up and start running.
That sounds familiar. That wasn't in the first game though.
Hmm.
So I do remember hearing about that. I don't remember which game that was.
So yeah, there's nothing like that going on, which is good. And so you've got these, which is a nice change of pace. It's not zombies, but
Yeah.
I guess the criticism I have with this, and you've watched a lot of it with Markiplier, you said maybe you feel the same way. There really isn't that much diversity in terms of the enemies.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's like, aside from the bakers, they're obviously unique, but yeah, it's like all the monsters, other than them, all the monsters kind of look the same.
Right, because
So that's
Mhm.
that's kind of too bad.
Right, because you had in the first one the zombies, of course. Then you had the dogs, the crows. You had various other things.
Giant spiders.
Giant spiders, yeah. That snake.
Oh yeah.
That was interesting. So you had a lot of different things because, we all know the Japanese name is Biohazard.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these mutated things coming after you. And Resident Evil Biohazard, it has the same name, but there's less, I guess, biohazardness. If you could even say that, if that's a phrase.
It is now.
it is now. I coined it. Go me. But that is just a disappointing part of it. Now, the part where I think they make up for the disappointment is with Immortal Jack.
Yeah.
So I was bringing up the fact before we started recording that I was comparing Immortal Jack Baker to Mr. X.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because, Mr. X gets launched into the Raccoon City police station, Resident Evil 2. He keeps showing up the most inconvenient times at boss fights, but he's super easy to take down, yet he keeps coming back. Jack, not so much. He keeps coming back, but it's like he's harder and crazier every time you deal with him.
Yeah. He also has a lot more personality.
Yes. Some of the things he yells at you while attacking is just completely insane. It's like it's got like every sort of like deep South Louisiana accent you could expect to ever hear.
Yeah.
Where he picks up that thing that looks like a giant pair of shears, but it's like two chainsaws together.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
like, you don't get it now, boy. And it's just like, what are you talking about?
But I probably should have mentioned this earlier, so this would be a little bit more linear. But I wanted to talk about my how I reacted to this game as opposed to my reaction to the trailer, not trailer, the demo, because I was kind of disappointed in the demo. Because, it's first person and you're just interacting with objects mainly, and it felt like a lot of the indie horror games I've seen come out recently. So
Right.
I thought that was kind of disappointing. And not that it didn't look good. Like the graphics, okay, it looked like a high budget indie horror game.
right.
It had really nice graphics, but it looked like it played like an indie horror game. And I'm like, okay, you're just like this guy. Plus it kind of felt like, apparently this was coincidence, but it felt a lot like Silent Hill PT also.
Right.
So
I mentioned
I thought
that last time, actually. If you recall, I mentioned that, and I'm like, well, obviously they looked at all this stuff that was working, and you told me, no, they were actually working on this first. And I was just blown away by that.
Yeah, it's interesting that those two different
Two different companies, two different genres, and
yeah.
well, no,
franchises.
yeah.
I think that's trying to say those two different franchises were trying the same thing basically.
Yeah. There we go.
But it did. But my main gripe, I mean, it looked like a good game overall, but like my main gripe was it didn't feel like a Resident Evil game at all. And then I started watching Markiplier play it, and the beginning of the game, it's like the first thing you find out is, oh, I have to go and find my wife who might be dead, and I'm like, okay, are we doing Silent Hill 2 now? And then the bit that comes after where the demo happens, the bit after the demo in the actual game, it's like suddenly you're strapped to this chair and there's like all these scary rednecks around you, and I'm like, okay, now we're doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And it took a little while for the game to, because then I noticed, okay, oh, here's a safe room and it's got a magic box in it, and it's, you know, every time you put an item in that box, it'll be in every box.
Yep.
And you know, the puzzles are very Resident Evil like. So, and of course, you've played the whole game, right?
I have not finished it.
Oh, okay. I won't. I was about to spoil something, but I won't. But yeah, towards the end, there's something that made me go, "Yep, definitely a Resident Evil game."
Perfect. That's exactly the way I felt about it too. Because when I played the demo, and we talked about this, and that's when you told me that no, Resident Evil started development first, and just blew my mind. I thought, wow, they just saw what all the indie horror guys were doing and said, "Yep, that's the ticket," and then did that. But when I actually started playing it, I was like, they swerved us all.
Yeah.
They swerved each and every one of us. And it was in a good way, too. Don't think, no, I'm going to be disappointed. No, you're going to be so happy. You're going to be happy at how much detail they put into this Baker family. So you want to learn more about them and what happened to them. You're going to want to explore every bit of this mansion so you can start solving puzzles, so you can learn more about what's going on and just learn more about, you know, what's happened to Mia, why Mia keeps turning and trying to kill you, different things like that. Because you go to save Mia, but spoiler alert, if you haven't gotten this far in the game, i.e. booted up and play 5 minutes, I'm sorry, but Mia takes his hand off, and then they have to put it back on. So that's an interesting aspect. And then later on, there's a tape where she's pleading, saying, "That wasn't me. Something's happening. Please believe me." They really hit the story part. They start hitting the part with, like, here's a monster, shoot the monster, just like in Resident Evil. And, you know, plenty of puzzles so you can keep progressing. You feel like you're actually putting forth effort when progressing, which is always good. So the other part I really want to talk about here, and you may have noticed this when you were watching some of the gameplay video, they've actually done some things to make it easier for players, I guess, who have never really played a Resident Evil game, or just easier in general, because the audience for a game like Resident Evil since, like, 96 to now has, of course, changed tremendously. The whole gaming atmosphere has changed tremendously. I think, like, if you took the difficulty of something like Resident Evil with those type of controls and just brought it into today, it would have a hard time getting anywhere. So some of the things that they did is, okay, in a survival horror game, the idea is usually to limit the supply you have in terms of defenses, like ammunition for your weapon, different things like that. What they've done to curtail that is they have introduced chem fluid in the game. So with chem fluid, you can actually mix that with the herbs you find to make, like, heavy first aids. You can mix it with gunpowder to make more ammunition for your guns. So the chem fluid can help out tremendously when you're in a pinch and maybe you've wasted too much ammunition in a fight where you should have been a little more strategic, shall we say.
Right.
So that's one area where they threw that in to make it a bit easier. Along with that, since it's a first-person shooter and you can now have better aim when it comes to shooting your weapons versus the first Resident Evil, mold monsters can usually be taken out with one headshot from a shotgun. So if you're good at a shooter and you know how to aim, you're probably not going to have too many problems taking out a bunch of those enemies without any type of issues. The last thing... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. I just... I had heard that it's easier to aim when playing the VR version than the regular version. Was that true, or...
I don't know. I have not, unfortunately, had a chance to do the VR version.
I know Markiplier had very bad aim when he played it, but I thought Angry Joe said something to the effect of how when he played the regular game, it was hard to aim, but then with VR, it was a lot easier.
I don't think I had any real problems aiming. I think the issue is, like, if something is behind you, people naturally start using their thumbstick to try and turn around. But that's another easier point when it comes to the gameplay. If you press down and circle, and I'm saying this for PlayStation players, if you have it on PS4, or down and whatever it would be on Xbox, I think it's still circle. Your character, well, not circle, it would be BA something. Anyway, your character will flip around immediately. They would do a complete 180, and then you'll be facing whatever's behind you. which allows you to do a really quick about face, aim up, shoot. It's pretty easy if you get used to that. If you panic and forget that, I can see where maybe it would be a bit difficult to aim, but otherwise, I don't see where it's difficult to aim.
Okay. Maybe Markiplier just has crap aim.
He might be one of the people not using the 180. And
possible. I don't remember what version he played, if he even specified. I would assume he played the PC version, but I could be wrong there.
Yeah, the 180 turn is essential if you're going to do good in the game. You have to do that. And possibly the last thing I can really think of that made the game easier is, one, inventory. So this actually bleeds into that point. So inventory, you get expansions for that. You don't have to be as hardcore about managing your inventory versus RE1. That was pretty damned essential. I think you were doing that pretty much all the time. Along with that, you don't have to have ribbons or anything like that to save. In the first Resident Evil, you had to have ribbons on you to save at typewriters. No ribbon, no save.
That's true, because I remember that you save on a tape recorder in Resident Evil 7, but I don't think you actually had to have tape to do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have anything like that in order to be able to do saves. So you didn't really have to worry about that. You could just pop into a save room and be like, okay, good. I can save now. I'm okay. And that was something really different compared to the first one. Because like I was saying, inventory management with the first one, you would have to carry, like, say, your pistol, a shotgun, ammo for both, something to heal, maybe a puzzle piece, and an ink ribbon.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have the ribbons, or you didn't pick the ribbon up because you had full inventory, and now you're out when you go in the safe room, you can't save. It's that simple.
Well, see, I always kept the ink ribbon in the box.
Right.
So that I could just swap it out with something whenever I wanted to save.
That's because you were good at inventory management. And you have to be. Did you play as Jill or Chris?
I usually play as Jill.
There you go, because Jill has 2 more inventory slots than Chris.
Yeah, I knew there was some reason why playing as Jill was better.
Yeah, Jill is considered the easier one to play as because she has more inventory. Chris has more health.
Yeah, that's how I thought I remembered it being.
But the health doesn't really matter if you just have the expanded inventory and you can just carry medicine wherever you go. That part doesn't matter. So that's why people usually choose to play as Jill over Chris with that one. Mm-hmm. But I would say that's like the big parts I noticed when I was going through Resident Evil 7. I could go ahead and answer my own question I posed to you earlier. I think they did go back to form with this one. They just maybe modernized it a bit more. Mm-hmm. If they could just keep this kind of form going, I think it would be really good. I'm also going to admit this while I'm thinking about it. When I was playing it and I would go to parts I didn't know, like I first got to a point and was just going through there because I would play it after work and it's like 2 a.m. The game legitimately scared me. I'm not afraid to admit it. It literally gave me chills.
And that was really disturbing and gory, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's the feeling you get like when you have the heightened senses and you expect to be scared, like you can feel your ears kind of get a little tighter and lifted. And I was just like, I know there's going to be a mold monster. I don't know where it's going to be. Because here's the other fun part, guys, if you haven't played the game yet. Mold monsters can appear anywhere there is mold. So if you're walking across a room that has mold all over the floor, they can appear behind you.
You gotta be careful.
Yeah, it's not like a zombie where you see the zombie and you're like, hey, there's a zombie. Nope, mold monster can come right out of the mold on the floor and come after you. But that's the way I would put Resident Evil. It is a true return to the original form, a bit updated. Fantastic game if you haven't picked it up. And you should, if you're a fan of horror, be it new school, old school, anything like that. It's definitely worth it for your collection.
Yeah, if the damn price ever goes down on the Steam version, I'm definitely going to buy it. I mean, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's a really good game, and it's mainstream game. Of course, it's going to be full price, but I just can't afford to spend that much on anything right now.
Right. I could certainly understand that.
Keep waiting for it to go on sale or something, because I don't know if I'd be any good at it, but I might be.
Well, like I said, if you get that opportunity to learn how to do the 180 turn, you'll be okay. The big thing you're going to have to learn, and everybody else listening to this is going to have to learn as well, the Immortal Jack fights. Immortal Jack, when you play him and you come against him the first few times, he is going to beat the hell out of you. It's that simple.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the fight where he does the dual chainsaws and turns it into a giant pair of shears, I lost count how many times he beat me before, like, I figured it out. And I was finally able to get him. Should I spoil it for you guys? Should I? All I can say is with that fight, there's a chainsaw somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, you should introduce Jack to the chainsaw. That's my advice. But is there anything else you can think of that you'd want to say about this, Dina?
Basically, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head about how I think they struck a good balance of making it kind of feel like the earlier games in a way, or function like the earlier games, but it still feels very modern. So I think they just hit that perfectly.
I think
I think fans of the older games will be happy because it sort of feels like the older games, or I guess it plays like them more like, but it still has, people who prefer newer games aren't going to be,
Right. I believe that they took a lot of ideas from, like, newer games and brought that in just to make that crowd happy, but also trying to make sure the old school crowd was happy, too.
It's not alienating people who like newer games, is what I think I was trying to say.
Yeah. I don't think it alienates anyone, to be honest.
Yeah.
Shooter fans are happy. Horror fans are happy. New Age gamers are happy because I totally forgot about the upgrade system. My apologies, guys. There's also an upgrade system in there where you can use ancient coins to buy certain upgrades. So you've got that.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, you've got a system like that in there. I can't think of any type of group that's left out in this.
Yeah.
So good job, Capcom. If Konami,
if only the enemies were a little more diverse. That's probably the only complaint.
Yeah. That's the only thing I could think of. And
there's one other thing I could complain about, but it's kind of a spoiler, so I'll just let you find out.
Okay. The only thing else I could say is if Konami ever wants to, stop being the new age Konami, you could go look at this, guys. If you could ever stop being fucks.
They're too busy making pachinko machines.
Oh, my God.
Hashtag fuck Konami.
Exactly. That's what we should say. But overall, with the success of this, the biggest thing I could say, and I'm sure you could agree, is please, now that you've seen that there is a market and it can be successful, quit doing this to Silent Hill. Bring it back and make it good. I mean, we know you're not going to, but there's a possibility.
I'm not holding my breath. Apparently, the reason Konami started making pachinko machines is because they get way more money off that. Yeah, so they're focusing on that because it's just good business sense, even though it screws over the gaming community.
I don't think they care about us anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just the way that is. But I think that wraps it up for this episode. We didn't want it to be a super long one because, we just wanted to talk about Resident Evil 7 after a friggin' year. Because that was the topic last time, too.
Yep.
I think we'll just get together, once a year and just talk about, hey, Resident Evil 7. Yep, Resident Evil 7.
Or when a Resident Evil 8 comes out.
Resident Evil 8, okay.
Wait, here's what we'll do. When you beat Resident Evil 7, we'll do another video. We'll do another one where we talk about Resident Evil 7 again, like the ending of it.
All right, I'll wait until around December. I'll finish it, and then when January rolls around, that will technically be a new year, and then we could do that.
There you go.
Perfect. We have the perfect timeline, guys. All right, well, we'll go ahead, and that was just silly. That was very silly. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up. So this is 2017's edition of the Codec. No, we're going to try and make this a monthly thing, guys.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
All right. Thanks for listening. Take care, guys.